Alright, ever since the Raspberry Pi was introduced, people have been doing some really cool stuff with it. Retro gaming consoles, custom built laptops and PCs, media centers, and much more. It is a pretty cool single board computer. Now my Raspberry Pi 3 Model B has been sitting on my desk for months. I mean months. My original plan for it was to build a custom laptop out of this old Apple PowerBook Duo. I don't know, but I have always been fond of this laptop. Ever since I first seen it in the movie Hackers, I just always thought that if I could build a custom modern laptop, it would be kind of cool. I've decided at this point not to use a Raspberry Pi. I want to use a more powerful single board computer. So since I've had this Raspberry Pi 3 sitting around, I decided obviously to build a retro gaming console. And for that, we, as I said, have the Raspberry Pi 3 Model B, 32 gig Samsung micro SD card, Super Nintendo style Raspberry Pi case. Let's check out all the components. Let's start putting this together and finding out exactly which retro gaming image I am deciding to use on this episode of the DIY Dummy. Alright, welcome back to another episode of the DIY Dummy, which was originally on the WeDeem channel. But I slowly found out that I just had way too many ideas going on one channel and thought I needed to make it a little more concise and bring the WeDeem channel to one niche. Now technically the WeDeem channel is two niches, tech and video game related content, but I personally think those go hand in hand. So I decided to make the DIY Dummy on its own channel. And today we are finally going to use this Raspberry Pi 3 Model B that's been sitting on my computer desk for months. It might even be a half a year. Maybe not so long, maybe I'm exaggerating, but it's been sitting there for a while and I'm finally going to use it to build a retro gaming console. I have also decided to pick up a 32 gig micro SD card. Now I've heard other people say that bigger cards work, but I think that it is specific cards, so I decided to go with the safe size, which is 32. And I got this NES style case, as it says on the box, NES style case. I think this is most likely a Chinese model. I don't even know the name of the manufacturer. And here goes the case itself. This particular one just has push power button and a push reset. There is another model that I have purchased and I'm going to be building a different retro gaming console with a image that is strictly Nintendo. I got this one because I kind of like the fact that there is a cover that will go over the Raspberry Pi ports. Some of the other models just have them sticking out with no cover. On the back you have the cutouts for the HDMI, the power cord, which is micro SD here, and I can't remember what that is. And on the front you have two USB ports. Also contained in the box here is a screwdriver with the screws, and you get the instructions that show you how to put it together. I don't think that this comes with a heat sink, so at some point I might have to purchase one myself. Now here is the Raspberry Pi 3, which as you can see, I think I purchased it on eBay, but it came from element14.com. I always found it cool that the Raspberry Pi comes in this little paper bag as though it was actually a Pi. You got your quick start guide in the box. Also come with the Element 14 Raspberry Pi safety guide. And honestly, this is the first time I've ever held a Raspberry Pi in my hand, and this thing is really small. To give you some sort of reference, there's my hand. Let's go ahead, start putting this together, and then we'll head over to the computer to show you which image I am going to be using and how I'm going to install it on the SD card. Well, I've gotten the screws off the case. There were 4 screws at the bottom of the case. Now, as you can see inside the case, you have a case fan. You have the extra USB cables. I believe this is for the power and reset button. And here, this, I believe, most likely will hook into 2 of the USB ports on the Pi. Here goes the instructions. As you see, it shows you, it says, please make sure plug in the device. Obviously, this is Chinese. The English translation is always horrible. It says, please make sure plug in the device on the first row and the red line on the edge, or it will cause a short circuit to make your Raspberry Pi out of action. That's lovely. All right, your first step is to unscrew the case, which I did. Then it says, what is the case? Raspberry Pi is not included. Jesus Christ, these directions. Please plug in the first USB port as above shows. So let's get the Raspberry Pi hooked up in here and see if I could do this without shorting my Raspberry Pi. Or as it says on here, your Raspberry Pi out of action. The Raspberry Pi goes on this side next to the black fan here, and you're supposed to attach the USB here to the 2 front USB ports on the Raspberry Pi. And there it's in and it's secure. But of course it's going to make it difficult to keep the Pi in place, so we're going to wait on that. Now apparently this is supposed to connect to the 3 first I/O pins on the Raspberry Pi. So let's get that done. Last thing I want to do is short out this Pi. Now I'm going to attach the Raspberry Pi with the black screws to the case. They give you 6 screws. I'm guessing that's extra because there's only 4 secure points on the Raspberry Pi. Of course, I am now going to have difficulty with these darn screws. Of course, this little screwdriver is not magnetic. Alright, I had to go get one of my Jegs magnetic screwdrivers because I could not get these little screws in with that provided screwdriver. It was quite annoying. So I suggest if you have a magnetic screwdriver to get it and use it. If you don't, I suggest you get one. Alright, the Raspberry Pi is now secure in there. Everything seems to be connected correctly, hopefully. You never know with the DIY dummy. Now we're just going to go ahead and secure the 4 screws that lock the case in place. Alright guys, as you can see, I'm putting the case back together and I am having difficulty keeping this flap or dust cover from getting stuck in the case. So maybe having one's not such a great idea. Case is together. Everything's secured in place. Now it's time to head over to my lovely slow PC and install the Raspberry Pi image on here. Alright, we're now over at the PC, but there's 2 things you're going to want to get, at least 2 things that I've seen. Now I have chosen to use Recalbox as the image on my Raspberry Pi retro gaming console. You want to head over to achieve.recalbox.com, and since I am specifically using a Raspberry Pi 3, you're going to want to use the Recalbox image for the Raspberry Pi 3, but as you can see, it works with a multitude of systems. The Pi 2 and the Pi 1. You also got PC 64 gig and 32 gig, and then also Odroid, which is a single board computer that is somewhat more powerful than the Raspberry Pi, which is probably what I'm going to use for that custom laptop build that I talked about. I'm not entirely sure yet. That is still in the works. But yeah, go ahead, if you're using a Raspberry Pi 3 like me, we're going to go ahead and use the Raspberry Pi 3 Recall Box image. You're also going to want to go and head over to Etcher, which is going to be the program that we're using to burn the image to the SD card. I am using a Windows PC, so I'm going to go ahead and download the Windows x64. There are a lot of other options here. 32-bit systems, you got the portable version of it, as you can see, and you also got for Mac OS if you're on a Mac OS or Linux-based PC. So you're going to go ahead and download both those. Now the Etcher software, that will download pretty fast. As you can see down here, the Recall Box image is taking a little while. It's about 290 megabytes as far as size is concerned, so you're going to want to wait for that to finish. And then we're going to go ahead and get to burning this image to a SD card, which I have installed in my PC already. Alright, now finally the Recall Box image is downloaded. It took a little while. It was 290 megabytes. We have Etcher installed. Now we just have to go ahead and click select image, and I'd assume it was on downloads. Maybe. Yep, there goes the Recall Box image right here for the Raspberry Pi 3, which is what we're using. Gonna go ahead and click that. As you can see, it loaded up the Raspberry Pi image for Recall Box. Gonna want to go ahead and select your drive. Mine is the SD card right here, drive H. It is a 32 gig. We're gonna go ahead and check that. Hit continue. Do make sure that that is your drive. You don't want to go installing it on something else. As you've seen, there were two drives. The one is my Western Digital 4 terabyte. Now you want to go ahead and click flash. It'll start flashing. And as I have come aware, this will take a little while to flash the actual image to the SD card. So as soon as that's done, don't like that sound. It is doing something very strange with my computer. Alright, started flashing. There you go. We're going to let that go ahead and take its course, and then we'll end up putting it in the Raspberry Pi. Alright, we're going to boot up the Raspberry Pi for the first time. As you see, I have it close to my Super Nintendo Classic. As you can see, the size difference in comparison. Would have been nice if they made this thing a little longer so it kind of slightly resembled the original Super Nintendo. Now, things you're going to need for this that it does not come with, you're going to need a micro USB for powering the device and an HDMI cable. Both of mine, I think, came from my Super Retron HD. So they got the gray color, so it kind of matches, so that's kind of cool. So you might want to go out and pick up two gray colored ones. You're also going to need a GameSir controller. Now I have the G3 and the G4. Now I don't know if I lost all the pieces. I found one dongle and I don't know if they work specifically for either one of them. I really want to use the G4, but for the sake of this video, we're just going to go ahead and use the G3. Let's hit the power button and power this on for the first time. Alright guys, I had to actually take the case off. I did see some smoke coming out the case, but luckily enough, we'll see if it starts. I mean, it came on. Luckily enough, it didn't look like I burnt out my Raspberry Pi. Oh, we do got the logo coming on down there if you see at the bottom. So it doesn't look like I burnt out my Raspberry Pi, guys. You're going to want to pay attention and make sure you don't put it on backwards. I will record or show a picture of how it's supposed to go on. I had it on backwards. Smoke was coming out. You don't want your Pi to burn out. Now, I don't know if I messed up any of the boards here, like the USB boards or anything. Maybe I burnt those out or something. That's not going to be good because then they're not going to work. But this show is called the DIY Dummy. And I did something that only a dummy would do. Stupid. But hopefully this thing gets loaded and it works and I have no problems and I got the plug out before it actually burnt anything. But it's a learning experience and it's a good thing. The Raspberry Pi is only $35. Although with the case and that, I mean, you're spending upwards of 60, 70 bucks after you get cables, more when you get a controller if you don't have one laying around. So you don't want to burn it out. I'm going to let this thing load. Hopefully it comes up and we'll be back. Alright, we had a quick scare there, guys. Anyway, everything's up and running. The only problem I'm having right now is getting the controller set up. Now, while I was on the internet, I heard you're supposed, with this specific G3 controller from GameSir, you're supposed to hold the A or press the A, and all it's doing is actually selecting what it's on, which is the Amstrad. I also noticed that the aspect ratio is wrong. It's cut off on the sides of the screen here. So I don't know what the deal is with that. Maybe I have to put the dongle in the back USBs, but that would make no sense in my opinion. Maybe something's set up wrong, but I'm going to go find out. Well, I found out what the issue is. As you can see, the setup lights on the bottom here. You kind of have to have it on the Android selection. And you do that by holding the, as the device is powered off, you hold the A and the power on button and it'll switch to that. Now we could go ahead and configure our controller. Now we're in the configure menu for your gamepad. Press up, down, left, and right on your D-pad. Now on the joystick, you're going to press up, and you're going to press left. And on the second joystick, up and left. Now you're going to hit A, B, X, and Y. You're going to hit start and select. You're going to hit L1, R1, L2, R2. You're going to press in your left thumbstick. Now press in your right. And on the GameSir, I am going to hit the hotkey as the middle button. No, that's not going to work. Well, that kind of sucks. I'll hit the hotkey as clear, no, select. So now select is the hotkey. You can't use the thumbsticks to move up and down the menu. You have to use the D-pad. As you can see, there's pre-installed games in it. But the device is working perfectly fine. This was my first Raspberry Pi build on the DIY Dummy. There are going to be several more possibly. I know I ordered the other SNES case, which is probably going to work better than this. The only reason I got this one is because of the dust cover that covers the ports in the back. But this has the press down and reset and power buttons. I believe the one that I did order has the slide up and down ones just like the original SNES, which is going to be kind of cool. Now this build, I'm going to go through it more, the games and everything on it, on the Wii Dean channel, on an episode of Wii Test possibly, or my tiny point of view. I'm not entirely sure, so if you're interested to see that, go ahead over to the Wii Dean channel, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell to keep informed as to when that video is coming about. Thank you for watching another episode of the DIY Dummy. There were some mishaps, guys. Please do pay attention to how you put that cable on the I/O pins, because I put it on backwards even though I read the directions. I guess I really didn't pay attention to which way it was facing. There are little notches on the bottom of that cable and you want to make sure it's facing the Raspberry Pi logo on the Pi 3. Don't have smoke coming out your system, because I almost burned out the board just like they tell you not to do. So do pay attention to that. Either way, this was This is a great case. I will leave a link to it in the description down below. I will leave a link to the Game Sir G3 controller, which is a great controller. I do have the G4. I will try to see if this guy will work on here too. Both of these controllers I've had for a while, and I wanted to do a review of them. Someone suggested them to me on my website, reviewsbythisguy.com. I really want to test these guys on the PS3 because apparently they work for that. I think maybe this one said it worked on the PS4. I'm not entirely sure. I only have one dongle and I'm not sure if it's compatible or universal with both of them. That's what happens when you don't organize your stuff. They get lost. But there will be a review of these controllers at some point. I will use them. You've already seen it. Connected to the Raspberry Pi, as you can see. I want to connect it to the PS3 and see if it works on there. Test out and see if maybe it works on the PS4 and also the PC. So do take a look at that. It will be on the Wii Dean channel. If you liked what you've seen contained in this video, please do hit that like button. Do consider sharing this amongst friends and the rest of the internet. And if you have built a Raspberry Pi retro console or any Raspberry Pi project, please do leave a comment down below. Let me know what image you used, because so far I already see something I'm not too happy about, but I will talk about that in the episode of Wii Test on the Wii Dean channel. If you're interested to see more from the DIY Dummy, please hit that subscribe button. I got a lot of other ideas, hopefully, that are coming to the channel. It's going to be fun. As you can see, first time doing this, and there were some mishaps, but luckily enough, they weren't catastrophic. See you in the next episode of the DIY Dummy.